So we're in the early 90s, you've been making your own records, you've had a hit record, appeared on Top of the Pops, and so presumably that at some point did you think that maybe your career was going to be as a performing musician?
Well, I had like two things happening around the same time, one of which was working very closely with Liam from Prodigy, and him being so clearly better than me at making records, and particularly that we, and I suppose what I didn't realise at the time necessarily was he was better than anyone at doing what he was doing. So it wasn't necessarily a brilliant deduction to like get discouraged by that in any way. But also at the same time, I was signed to a label called London, so I had the experience of kind of seeing what was basically a major label, which was was tricky, and I wouldn't particularly blame them for it. But the music we were doing wasn't that great. And so there was a sort of energy at XL with Liam and with Prodigy, which was absolutely incredible, and was building. And I think there was a sort of energy slightly dribbling out of music I was making myself at that time. And I suppose very few people ever decide what it is they're going to do and just do it, like that specifically. It's more like I decided I was going to be involved in music, so I was involved in music, but the specifics of how that work out, I think there's often, there's someone who ends up being, doing maybe what you did, or someone who ends up being in a band. I mean, these things are anything can happen really. People don't totally control that, and fate.
There's a hell of a lot of luck involved, and there's a lot of circumstances, and it's a case of, what you do with the luck that comes along, I think. So, XL had been a label that was putting out these great sort of dance records coming out of the rave scene. And then, one of the earliest bands that you signed was the Prodigy. And then they just exploded. And that was their third album that was absolutely massive and arguably bigger than the label in itself. So how did that affect the label? Did it feel like it was tipping it over in some way?
I mean, we had the build-up to all that was incredible. The sort of period from like 91 to 97, where we made three Prodigy albums that were, they're all great records, and I think they all stand up really well. And there was a massive learning process of just everything really, of making those records and the touring of those records, and the records coming out all over the world, and people responding to them, and that, like probably the most useful thing for me that I got from that was because Liam Howlett is such an uncompromising character, and he had a sort of authentically punk way of looking at things, and what that meant was there were certain things he wasn't going to do, one of which was go on TV. So they never did a TV appearance, and because he felt that just wouldn't work for them. So he had no interest in the rules. So I was getting this incredible, and it sort of struck a chord with me, because I'd always thought, somewhere in my mind, I'd thought, do you really have to do all this stuff? There's a lot of stuff in the music business it's just sort of bullshit. You really have to go through it all. And he had this like very powerful instinct that you didn't, and that the music was good enough to speak for itself. So that's what he was doing, and I loved that. So I was backing him up in that, and things got more and more successful. So we were kind of getting proved right. So I've had this very fortunate experience of working, all my formative experience in the music business is like, you can be very uncompromising, you can be very uncommercial, and you can still succeed a lot. And I'm aware now that, a lot of people working in music just haven't had that experience, especially people working in record labels. They've never really seen that. They've never seen that happen. The things they've seen have success are things where the rules have been obeyed, and everything's been geared towards the radio, and everyone's behaved themselves, and whereas I suppose Prodigy was probably a bit more like authentically, rock and roll in what they did, and it not being about the rules at all. So that was great. That was a great training that's like helped.
And that was a lesson that you actually then carried forward with other artists.
100%, and so it's been. I know that that's been valuable for like people that I've worked with, that I've been able to say to them, your suspicions about the rules, you're right. As long as the music is great enough, and as long as you really are good enough and focused enough as a musician, like that's all true. You don't have to do what anyone thinks you should.